In part one of this video, you're going to join me as I disassemble and inspect the engine that I'll be installing a 700 kit into. The format is different from how we normally shoot, but we thought you might enjoy a more hands-on look at how this is all done in a lot more detail than you normally see. It's a good-sized project, so we're going to be breaking it up into bite-sized pieces. You may recognize the bike we're going to be working on as it belongs to our mate Tristan. Tristan is on our Revelry Race team, has been for several years, and he and his bike took the New South Wales State Championship a few years ago. This bike currently has 23,000 kilometers on it. It has an S&S cam Powertronic tuner, and it has done countless passes at the drag strip. He uses it to commute back and forth to work all the time, and he loads it up with camping gear and goes touring on it. So it's lived a life. Let's open this thing up and see what's what before we install the performance goodies. First thing we're going to do is tie this thing down. You don't ever lift a motorcycle without some sort of tie downs on it. You've only ever really got to drop one off the lift to wish you had done it right. Pull that up reasonably straight. We'll get it up in the air. Start with the side covers and the seat. I say go put those on the shelf because we just don't put painted parts. You don't store painted parts on a workbench. See, people do it all the time. They'll set a fuel tank right here. Then they reach for a tool. Next thing you know, you got a tool dink in your fuel tank. So speaking of fuels, I forgot the block. When I was calling up all my tools, the one thing I forgot, you can never have enough of in a workshop, is the magical wooden block. You need it for all kinds of things, and this is one of the most common. The other thing is this motorcycle lift. So it's either move this motorcycle up and down or move my old ass up and down. My old ass don't move up and down as easy as it used to. I did the duck walk around on the floor as a young mechanic for many years and paid the price. So I got the two vent lines, the overflow line and the vent line off the fuel tank, and disconnected the fuel pump. Now I can move that tank up a little more. The one that's trickiest to get to seems to be this fuel gauge. That's this green connector under here. I don't know if you can see that, but that's got to come off as well. For some of this stuff, my hands are a little big, but there it is. And then the really tricky bit. The small hands are holding the camera, that's true. So now the next one can be really problematic, and it depends on the orientation. I'm going to get a light so you can see. Where did that light go? You see this fuel fitting, right? Now in the earlier bikes, this fuel fitting seems to always be in this orientation. It has two triggers on it. It looks like this, right? And it's got these two triggers. You have to squeeze both of them and pull this line off. So you got to get these two triggers. Well, on this bike, whoops, one of them's back here and the other one's in the front. On the later model motorcycles, they're all being installed with the two triggers on either side, which is a little easier to get to. These can be a little tricky, and getting to it very often when they're like this, you need to pull one of the fuel injector connectors to be able to get into it. But usually, you can get your pliers in there, squeeze both of them, and lift it straight off. Those are a beautiful thing. All right, so once that's off, now this and side note for customers, when you're bringing your motorcycle in to have a big bore job done, don't go fill the fuel tank first. It just means it's that much heavier to pull off. So you get it off, there's everything disconnected, and we take that and stash it in the shelf. We have a padded shelf over there for painted parts. Okay, so now we've got to start getting this thing apart where we can get to everything, and we can start that. These have got to come up. Oops. Time for the horns to come off. And very often these will have a zip tie in there that needs to be cut, but this one doesn't seem to have one. You just press on these and they pop right off. One of those horn wires was already popped off, so his horns weren't one of his horns wasn't working. Spark plug wires can come off, and we'll tuck them up out of the way. Nice orange throttle cables. Tristan reckons this is the trick at the racetrack. That's what makes him so fast. These O2 sensor connectors need to come apart before we can take the exhaust off. Those are also potentially a little tricky. They have a latch. I'll get a light. And this is a Euro 4 bike. The Euro 5s are different. They have a latch right here. You have to lift that latch to be able to slide those out. So you lift that latch and slide those off from each side. The trigger for that connector is right here. Press that down, connector pops apart. So now I'm going to take the exhaust off. So first we'll just take them loose at the head. A little bit corroded. Now you'll notice that I'm not taking that O2 sensor out. I don't know why it is. It seems that people think they've got to take those O2 sensors out, and generally speaking, you're causing yourself more trouble than good trying to take that out and put it back. You don't have to take it out, don't. So we'll take this exhaust system and stash it over here. There we go. This is a Euro 4, so it's got this secondary air tube on it that doesn't actually need it in the way, so we're just going to pull that up out of our way. Easy enough to put back later. And this whole ABS bracketry needs to come up to get the rocker cover off, and the only thing you really have to watch for, sometimes the coil, there's a couple of things. Sometimes the coil connectors won't clear and you can damage this connector if you're not careful, right? If it clears and goes up okay, that's fine, but if it doesn't, you need to just pay attention to it as you push this thing up. And the other thing is on this side, The manifold absolute pressure switch, or map switch, is up here, and there's a hose that runs through this motor mount to the throttle body. When you pick this up, that hose will get disconnected. You want to be sure that you reconnect that when you put it all back together, because they certainly don't run well with it disconnected. All right, this one is going to jam up on that frame, so I'm going to have to cut this zip tie to get myself more clearance. I didn't get a cutter out. Okay, so far it's blocks and cutter and side cut. Wooden block and side cut I've missed so far. There we go. Now that should let it go up. There we go, without damaging anything. So now,
here you go.
I just slip my screwdriver in under here, or I can slip it through back here, whatever works, and that'll hold this up enough to keep it out of my way. Now on this Euro 4, I can probably get this rocker cover out without moving the coils. On the Euro 5s, the coils are in the way, so you got to take the coils down and get them out of your way. While I'm here, I might as well take the clamps off the throttle body. So I need the throttle body to manifold loosened up. I'm just going to loosen that up enough to let it go. I'm not going to let the screw come out. And same thing on the other side. All right. Now while I'm here, when I go to lift this cylinder head off, this throttle body's got to come back out of my way. And the only way for that to come back far enough to get out of the way is if I move this air box. There are 2 screws up here holding that air box in place. So if I take those out, that will let me move the air box back. All right, so now when it becomes necessary, I should be able to move that box back, except this thing has a Powertronic in it, so these modulators are going to be in the way, so the box won't move back. So I am going to need to move those Powertronic modulators out of the way, or I am never going to get that air box to move back. So we'll just hang that one down. See if we can get this one to move. Well, looks like I got maybe 10 millimeters there. All right, there's that one out of the way. Now, we should be able to get that box to go back. Okay, I'm going to very carefully move this throttle body out of that fitting. We might as well take the top motor mount loose since we're here. It's a 6 mil, not an 8. Can you just hold that nut for me? 14, can you get on that? Oh, you ready?
Ready.
Okay, so this top motor mount can come out, and this one can too, but of course this one has that map hose going through it, so you got to be careful with that. All right, now we're ready to get the rocker cover off. Whoops, where'd that go? It's all up out of the way. So now this should come off nice and clean. So I forgot that to take the cover loose with, T-handle to hold it. And a 17th to turn the crank with. I also forgot the spark plug wrench. She's a little fueled. Now we can turn the engine over. So we're going to rotate this around to either side. So you get either of these marks, either left or right, right here. I've got the left parallel to that surface. So now I can take this rocker block off. So get this rocker block off with rocker arm carrier, whatever you want to call it. Actually, before I take this all the way loose,
Yeah, I was gonna suggest.
we should have a look at this rocker shaft and whether or not it moves in that tower, rocker arm tower. Okay, so it should be nice and free this way, but it shouldn't move at all up and down, and this one doesn't. This one's good. Just walk that off. You want to pay careful attention to your two dowel pins. They will either be stuck in the head or they'll be stuck in this rocker tower. You want to watch them. Don't drop it down in the chain galley. You do not want to drop one of those into the lower end. Ruin your whole day. All right. So now we have to rotate the engine around until both, at least stay over there. You can just watch that. You rotate the engine around until both those valves are unloaded. So you go around, the intakes come down, come back up. They'll now be unloaded, and now your mark for the right side is lined up, so we can pull that rocker out. Rock that guy up and watch your dowel pins. We'll do a more detailed inspection, but for right now we just take a quick look. Is there any physical damage to any of these pads or those rollers? Do the rollers feel like they have any play in them? Not at all. And we'll have a look at the surface of those camshafts as we roll it around, looking for any indication that we're starting to lose the hard face off a cam. And my side looks beautiful. So I don't see any problems with rocker arms or cam.
I don't see anything either.
So now we'll go ahead and break the cam bolts loose and then take the cam chain tensioner out. You can go sort of either way. I prefer to take the bolts out of the cam while there's still tension on the chain. And again, do not drop that puppy right down there. If you do, you have the opportunity to become exceedingly proficient with a long magnet. All right. So now, before we pull this sprocket off the cam, we need to get the tension off that cam chain. There are a number of ways to do that. It takes a little screwdriver of some sort. There are a number of different little screwdrivers you might do that with. This one is my personal preference. You just take this cover bolt out. Whoops. That guy. Then you just need to turn this in until it stops. Might need a wrench. This is one of those, if I was using something with a screwdriver handle on it, I probably wouldn't need the wrench, but I like this. I kind of prefer it. It lets me put tension on it. There we go. Now you'll see this chain has slack in it. Now I can pull the sprocket off. Take the chain off the sprocket, pick this whole assembly up, and bring it out. Now, because I'm taking this thing apart, I'm really not worried about that cam chain. I've seen people do all kinds of silly things to try to hold this cam chain up. You really don't need to. The cam chain can go. You do want to kind of drop it straight down. As long as you got a long magnet, it's not a big deal to retrieve it later. Okay, so at this point, we are ready to break the cylinder head loose. And I'm just going to do that with a breaker bar. Where'd my breaker bar go? You got it over there? It's also not a bad, because this is a cylinder head that's going back on this job, I'm going to go ahead and mark these now, just as a matter of practice. Because they'll need to be marked when we go back together. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I do this different from the book. 6, 7, 8. And just for giggles, we'll break them loose in that same order. Now, this motor has never been apart from the factory, so what you're seeing here is that's the tension that was put on them from the factory. All right, now we'll just go back again until they actually come free. Okay, so now the ratchet go. There it is. Is that a 12? Yep. You need a magnet when you take these apart because you do not want to lose any of these washers. So you might get them all out of there without a magnet, but generally speaking, you're going to need a magnet. So we'll see if I can get them all out without a magnet. So These can be finicky. Now that, yeah, I'm not going to try, because what I don't want to do is drop one of those washers down in the crankcase. So I'm not even going to attempt to do it without a magnet. I'm just going to go ahead and get the magnet. You do not want that in the bottom end.
Becomes a very different job then.
Yep. And it's real easy to do.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how some of these bolts may be difficult to remove?
Well, that's, they are. So, for example, that's got to come up through this thing. So you do have a path. You got to move this around to get these bolts far enough up to get them out, especially on this side. The ones over here and on the outside is not a problem. It's really these two that tend to be problematic.
And then sometimes they get hydrolocked.
Well, they are, yeah, they're almost always hydrolocked in the bottom. So you'll notice, like I took a lot of those out with a wrench and they would come up like this one. You can feel it. Like that's the end of the threads. If I pick that up, it kind of sucks it back. You can hear the oil. You can hear the oil in that hole, right? So yeah, they'll be hydrolocked with oil and don't want to come out. The washer came out with that one. Yeah, this one's really stuck in there. You come up and over to get that out. And get that washer. Rightio. That needs to come back to the back side. Throttle body's already moved. Let's see if we can get this to go back a little more. Now it's time to break the cylinder head loose from the cylinder. So this cylinder head has two dowel pins in it. Memory serves, they're here. And it's going to be stuck to this cylinder usually pretty hard. And you'll see that up inside that cylinder head, right there, there's a lug on that casting on the cylinder head. We're going to use that lug to pry the cylinder head away from the cylinder, but we're not going to put any pressure on the fin. We're not using the fin to pry against that lug. You're going to get something that's just the right size so that it goes all the way in to the cylinder. And you see I got a gap right here. I'm just slightly lifting. Didn't take much pressure on this one. Now we go to the other side and do the same thing. Sometimes those are much tighter than that. This one moved pretty good. So now we've just got to work that cylinder head off those dowel pins. And doing that without breaking the cylinder base loose is nearly impossible. This base has already come loose. So, oops, stop. I did it again. I do this all the time, or I do it more often than I should. This thing's got a zip tie tying those together. I forgot the engine oil temperature sensor, which is attached to the cylinder head right there, and it has a wire that comes up to here. And before I pull that cylinder head off, you're going to have to disconnect that wire. Zip tied down pretty tight. So that's this one. It's also zip tied in there. So this is our connector right here. So this type connector, you have to push down on this trigger. Which is easier said than done. when you can't see it, there it is. And then we'll... Okay, now that's free. Now the cylinder head will come out. So we just want this back on that side. Just another steps forward. It has to come up. Oops, I'll roll that around. It has to come up over that. And then we're set. So, what do we have here? Head gasket looks like it was holding pretty well. There's no signs of compression. A little bit of combustion may be making its way right here, but not bad at all. There's no signs of that head gasket leaking anywhere. And the dowel pins both came out with the cylinder head. So you got to always keep track of your dowel pins. You don't want one of these in the lower end either. So in this case, and very often they do, most of them come out with the cylinder head. This thing also doesn't really show any, there's no liquid oil around. I mean, there's this came out of that drain port. There's no oil in these combustion chambers. They're nice and dry carbon, which is all a good sign. This gasket surface, pretty good. All right, so we might as well go ahead and lift these bores off. Get this out of my way. Oops, sorry, this needs to come up and out of there first.
I got this piston.
Okay. All right, so I'm just going to throw a rag in there just in case this clip happens to go somewhere I don't want it to, because they do occasionally go boing. There's that. That one's kind of stiff. Let me pop this one out.
Let me see if I can't somehow shoot that. Is that okay?
Yeah. See it? Just going to go right there. That one went boing right here. All right. So there's his original piston with 23,000 kilometers on it.
Hard kilometers.
Hard kilometers. It's got a little bit of blow by past the top ring. On the sides, it's got a little bit, you know, it's starting to show a little bit down to the third ring, but all in all, I mean, that piston still run a very long time yet. Stack this over here. That one does not want to move. No, yeah, it moved a little bit. Break out the old trusty old piston pin pusher outer. There we go.
We're going to be talking about tools.
That, my friends, has pushed a lot of piston pins out of a lot of motors.
That is one of my favorite tools that Will has.
Actually, I'll wipe that off before I put it back. Okay, so there it is, top end's down. Now, first thing you really want to pay attention to is, see all the oil and all these holes? That has all got to come out. So you don't see oil, and the oil actually comes to the top end through these two holes up and over into around this stud and up. But you don't see oil in these because they don't end up with oil standing in them. It's these that end up with oil just standing over time in the studs. And you will occasionally, like let's just pan down and look at these studs. Here we go. These two studs, which are going to be these, they're going to be the two center front studs. Those, we're seeing a little bit of combustion chamber making its way over into those studs holes. That's what turns these black. Those are getting exposed to the combustion chamber, and that's because the head gasket's letting a little bit through. You want the stud to come out of your race motor to look like that. In fact, you want all your studs to look like that. You don't really want these studs exposed to combustion chamber. Well, not only is that exposed to the carbonizing of the combustion chamber, that stud's exposed to combustion chamber temperatures, right? So that's not a good thing. You don't really want that. Stand back with that camera so you don't get oil all over it. This is what this process looks like. You got to get the oil out of here, and the best way I know to do it is just cover it and blow it out, just like that. So, yep. One more. Yeah, it's a good idea to do these two, just in case.
Felt that one.
Yep. Got a little splatter there. I need to track down my other dowel pin. I see one there. And there's the other one here. Now, in this particular case, since I'm not going to be using this cylinder again, I want to be real sure this dowel pin doesn't stay with that cylinder. And I don't really need to keep track of those. This is the original equipment paper gasket. And as you can see, it didn't survive very well. This gasket, I reckon, my opinion is that this gasket is the reason that you're seeing that combustion chamber exposure to those studs. Over time, you can see how this gasket is malformed, right? Over time, as this alloy engine heats and cools, it grows, right? So these alloy parts expand quite a bit, and when it gets hot, the clamp load on that gasket is a lot more than it is when it's cold. And when an engine cycles heat many times, this gasket loses its clamp load, and the loss of clamp load is what lets you get combustion chamber exposure out into those studs holes. Now the other byproduct of that is when you've got combustion chamber being exposed to those studs, it also means that you've got combustion chamber exposure, carbon exposure from the combustion chamber into the return oil in the motorcycle. So it will make the oil get black much sooner than it would if you didn't have combustion byproducts making its way into the engine oil. So the whole clamp load going away, combustion byproducts in your engine oil, all not a good scenario. Now, having said that, this engine probably would have continued to run just like this for, who knows, I mean, it's only 23,000 kilometers. It could continue to run its whole life like this, but it would require, more and more frequent oil changes, and it almost certainly is eventually going to start leaking. That's why there is a multi-layer steel base gasket now. We don't use anything else. We never ever use a paper base gasket in any of these engines ever again. All right. This is not going to be affected. The clamp load on this gasket is not going to be affected nearly the way that this paper gasket is. So, for what that's worth. Now, so that's it for tearing it down. We are down to the point now that we're ready to we're going to start, and it's getting late in the day, so we're going to start cleaning things up. This is the new cylinder and pistons that are ready to go on it. Actually, while we're standing here, you can see that is an original cylinder, and you can see the thickness of the cast iron that is cast into the alloy in that original equipment cylinder. And this is an original equipment cylinder that's bored out to 81 millimeters. Now, we've bored quite a few of these cylinders in an experimental mode, and we feel pretty confident that 81 is about as far as you can safely go boring this stock cylinder. So that's what we've landed on. And an 81 millimeter bore gives you a 700cc kit.